The Secret Service says it has intercepted 2 suspicious packages that were addressed to former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and former President Barack Obama. The package to Clinton was intercepted late Tuesday, and the package to Obama intercepted on Wednesday morning. Now, for more on this, we're joined by CGTN Correspondent John Terret in New York. John, of course, earlier we've heard of 2 packages that were confirmed by the Secret Services, but we understand that they are talking about a few more now. What more can you tell us?
Well, by my calculation, Lindy, we're talking about 5 devices over the course of this week so far. But there were 4 that have turned up so far today. Now, by far and away, the one making the big headlines is because it happened at a television station at CNN. And that device, we've just been told by the head of the New York Police Department, was thought to be live. It was thought to be an active bomb, and I'm told it was some kind of pipe bomb. Now, that's been taken off to the Bronx, to a police facility there, where it will be looked into, and they'll be looking, among other things, to see if there are any similarities with the other devices that have turned up today, Wednesday, in New York. And that will be, as you rightly say, one to the home of President and Mrs. Clinton, which is in Chappaqua, to the north of New York City. Now, we're told that President Clinton was at home. She is in Florida giving a speech, and indeed that device was intercepted away from the home. Also a device on Wednesday turning up, being sent to the Obamas. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Obama and their children still live in Washington, D.C., not far from the White House. And again, we understand that that device was intercepted before it got anywhere near the home. Then the 4th device today has turned up at the headquarters of the office of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is a Florida congresswoman. And the reporting from CNN itself this hour is that the device was actually addressed to Eric Holder, who's a former Attorney General under the Obama administration, but that the return address was to Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office, which is why it turned up there. CNN is also reporting, I was just watching them before coming into the studio, they're also reporting that the return addresses on all of these devices were to that Florida office. And the 5th device turned up on Monday at the home of George Soros. Now, he is a left-wing philanthropist. He lives to the north of New York City as well, and that device was actually placed by hand, apparently, in his letterbox at the end of his drive. So that makes 5 in all. There is a report that there's a suspicious package being investigated now by San Diego police in California. All of these devices, it's being reported, are fairly crude. Lindy.
And indeed, John, this is, whatever this is, it's a very brazen indeed. Just how unusual is this finding of bombs in political houses and offices? How unusual is this in New York and D.C.?
Well, you know, I have to tell you that actually it is more common than you might think. I'm afraid it happens all the time. And if you think back over the course of the last 12 months or 18 months, there have on occasion been waves of these things happening. But what normally happens is that they get intercepted at the mail depot before they get anywhere near the person who has been targeted. And of course, on this occasion, that doesn't seem to have happened. Of course, it didn't get near the Clintons' home, it didn't get near the Obamas' home, but apparently it did get delivered to the Florida congressman, and clearly a device got inside the CNN mailroom. Now, once upon a time, I have to tell you, an event like this would not really be reported. I think CNN has elevated this to the level of an international news story because they've chosen to broadcast from the streets 2 blocks away from their studios when they could just as easily have defaulted to Washington, D.C. or to Atlanta. But they're not doing that. They're making this all about themselves. And for that reason, I think this has become a far bigger story than it might otherwise be. And of course, now we're seeing reports of bomb threats and suspicious packages cropping up all over the country, and that's going to go on for the next 2 days, I've no doubt, from previous experience. Lindy.
But of course, these are very high-profile targets, the Obamas, the Clintons, George Soros, as you mentioned, and of course CNN. Any speculation or idea of what the motive may have been behind all of this?
Well, it is awfully early to say with any certainty, but there is a pattern that is being reported and seems obvious when you realize these targets, including CNN, are all considered by many in this country to be progressive organizations or progressive people or democratic leaning organizations. And certainly even John Brennan, who is the former head of the CIA, whose name was apparently on the package that was sent to CNN, which is odd because he doesn't work for CNN, he works for their rival MSNBC. He may not be necessarily associated with the left, but he's been very, very critical indeed of President Trump in the past. So you could, if you wanted to divine a pattern here, these are all people who have either been critical, very critical of President Trump, and of whom he has been very critical of them. Of course, it is simply too early to say with any certainty, but that will be a line of investigation for the FBI and the other authorities as they look now to try and find who might be behind this. Because clearly, if a device gets into the CNN center, and it is apparently was a live device, according to the head of police in New York, then even though you could criticize CNN maybe for going over the top with their reporting about themselves, it's still a very serious matter that a device of that kind could get so far into a US corporation.
Absolutely, it is indeed. Well, thank you so much, John Terret, with that update for us, joining us live from New York. And as he says, the count of packages, suspicious packages found by the Secret Service is now at 5.